The late autumn afternoon sun began to cast faint, fading golden streaks across the shaded corner of the home tai pear garden. Tien gently carried a woven rattan basket filled to the brim with freshly picked pears on her back. Beads of sweat glistened softly on her forehead and rested on her flushed cheeks, yet her eyes shone with a simple, profound happiness. Her morning trip to the market had exceeded all expectations. The early season pears, round, crisp, sweet, and juicy, had been completely bought out by local merchants and visiting tourists in no time. Returning to the farm amidst the familiar peace and quiet of the mountain forest, her heart fluttered with joy at the thought of a cozy dinner this evening. Today was truly an exceptionally special day for her. Papa Phượng, her former father-in-law, after many days of hesitation, deep thought, and reluctance, had finally agreed to move to the farm to live with the two of them permanently. Although on paper and in name, the marital bond between her and his son had ended long ago, in the depths of Papa Phượng and Appo's heart, Tien had always been a biological daughter whom he treasured, was proud of, and loved dearly. Conversely, Tien had never regarded him as an outsider. She always offered him the utmost respect, affection, and devotion a child could give to a parent. Under the fading twilight sun dipping behind the distant mountain range, Giac had also just finished cleaning and renovating the main house. The rustic, traditional indigenous house with its Enyang tiled roof was now swept clean, fragrant with the scent of new wood and wild meadow flowers, ready to welcome Papa Phượng. As the car carrying Papa Phượng pulled up in front of the farm gate, Tien rushed out enthusiastically to carry his bags, welcoming him inside with a radiant smile. As Papa Phượng stepped out of the vehicle, his hair appeared much grayer than during their last meeting, his step slightly faltering, and his face visibly gaunt and drawn. Yet, upon seeing Tien and Giac waiting with warm smiles, his eyes instantly brightened. Deep within those Crow and Appo's feet-lined eyes lay a vast love mixed with endless affection and longing. He smiled gently, patted Tien and Appo's hand, and told her there was no need to go to so much trouble. Together, they led him on a tour of the main house. As previously agreed upon by the whole family, the spacious, airy, and most comfortable main house was reserved exclusively for Papa Phượng to rest in his old age, while Tien and Giac would move into the small, newly built wooden house next door. Seeing the thoughtfulness, devotion, and sincere hearts of his children, Papa Phượng was moved to the point of tears. He nodded repeatedly, a sensation of indescribable warmth welling up inside him, the peaceful solace of a man who had weathered life and Appo's storms and finally found a serene resting place alongside his loved ones. However, behind that gentle smile and reflective expression lay a terrifying secret that Papa Phượng had strived to bury for months. As Tien excused herself to the kitchen to prepare dinner and Giac went behind the house to finish a wooden storage shelf, Papa Phượng sat alone in the quiet room. The surrounding space sank into silence, broken only by the wind whistling through the door frame. Slowly, he reached his thin, trembling hand deep into the pocket of his worn coat and pulled out an unlabeled white pill bottle, more than half empty. He poured 2 large tablets into his palm, hastily put them into his mouth, and swallowed them with a gulp of cold water. Immediately after, an agonizing pain surged from his abdomen like a crashing wave, momentarily distorting his face. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. Papa Phượng had to squeeze his eyes shut and grip the edge of the wooden table so tightly that his knuckles turned white, suppressing a painful groan just so he wooed and Appo's Tien, who was busy downstairs. In truth, Papa Phượng was battling terminal cancer. The malignant cells had metastasized widely throughout his body months ago without his knowledge. By the time it was discovered, it was already too late. Doctors had diagnosed that his remaining time was measured in mere days. He knew all too well that his health was fading like a flickering candle flame in a storm. Before deciding to move to the farm, Papa Phuong had secretly met with a private lawyer in the city. He had hurriedly transferred all his life savings, from the land and the ancestral house in the countryside to his meager remaining retirement fund, legally bequeathing everything to Tien in a will. He did not wish to bind her with obligations or memories of the past, but he wanted to offer one final layer of protection and shelter to the daughter he loved most. He had adamantly refused to spend his last days in a cold hospital room entangled in tubes, wires, and the harsh smell of disinfectant. His sole remaining desire in life was to spend his final days at the farm, breathing the fresh rural air, seeing Tien smile, and watching her live a truly happy life alongside those who cherished her. In the small, cozy kitchen below, savory smoke began to waft through the air, carrying the aroma of freshly cooked food. Tien carefully and meticulously prepared a delicious feast to celebrate Papa Phuong and Appo's homecoming. She personally made stir-fried glass noodles with dried bamboo shoots, a rustic, flavorful dish that had always been his absolute favorite, alongside a plate of vibrant green boiled vegetables freshly picked from the garden. Moreover, she carefully peeled the ripe, juicy early-season Hon Tai pears, arranging them skillfully into a beautiful flower pattern on a white porcelain plate. As she worked, she smiled to herself, picturing the warm scene of the family gathered around the dinner table, sharing conversation and plans for the future. When everything was neatly completed, Tien joyfully carried the plate of pears out to the porch. By now, the twilight had completely faded, leaving behind a quiet and chilly dusk. Papa Phuong was sitting on a wooden chair facing the wide courtyard. From a distance, Tien called out cheerfully, and quote, "Papa, dinner is ready. I stir-fried the bamboo shoot noodles just the way you like them, and I peeled some sweet pears too. Come inside and eat," end quote. Yet, answering her warm and eager call was only a chilling, eerie silence. Papa Phuong did not turn his head, nor did he respond as he usually would. His body slumped limply to one side, his thin arms hanging lifelessly over the armrests of the wooden chair. The secret bottle of painkillers slipped from his coat pocket, rolled a few times across the terracotta tiles, and came to a stop beneath the chair. The bright smile on Tien and Appo's lips froze instantly. The plate of pears in her hands wobbled and fell, shattering completely onto the ground, scattering porcelain shards and pear slices everywhere. Tien rushed frantically to his side, her hands shaking violently as she shook his shoulders, and quote, "Papa. What and Appo's wrong? Papa, please wake up," end quote. Papa Phuong and Appo's shoulders were ice cold, his body completely unresponsive. Tien and Appo's desperate, panic-stricken cries echoed through the dark farm compound, sending Jiak racing out from behind the house. Finding Papa Phuong unconscious, Jiak immediately hoisted him onto his back and, together with Tien, rushed out to the main road to hail a vehicle to the emergency room, just as a sudden evening downpour began to fall heavily. The hallway of the provincial hospital was enveloped in a cold, suffocating, and terrifyingly somber atmosphere. The glaring red light above the emergency room remained continuously lit. Tien sat collapsed on a cold iron bench, her head buried in her hands, her tears blurring a face pale with fear. Jiak paced relentlessly outside the emergency room door, his expression fraught with deep anxiety and tension. After more than 2 agonizing hours of waiting in despair, the door finally creaked open. The chief doctor stepped out, lowering his mask with a heavy, troubled sigh. Tien rushed forward, her voice trembling and barely audible, her fingers clutching tightly at the doctor and Appo's sleeve, and quote, "Doctor. How is my father? Is he okay?" end quote. The doctor looked at Tien, his eyes filled with profound sympathy, end quote. "We have temporarily stabilized him through the immediate crisis. However, the family needs to prepare mentally for the worst-case scenario. The patient has end-stage cancer, and the cancer cells have metastasized extensively throughout his internal organs. His fainting was caused by severe physical exhaustion and extensive organ damage. To be frank, given his condition, he has been enduring unimaginable physical pain for many months. The fact that he has maintained life until now is purely due to the continuous use of high-dose painkillers and an extraordinary willpower to live." End quote. The doctor and Apo's words struck like a bolt of lightning, shattering every piece of peace and tiny glimmer of hope in Tien and Apo's heart. She stood frozen in place, her eyes wide as she stared at the doctor in sheer disbelief. All strength seemed to be drained completely from her small frame. Tien collapsed onto the cold tiled floor of the hospital corridor, breaking down into bitter, choked sobs of agonizing grief. Suddenly, a rush of memories from the past flooded back into her mind. She remembered the time she had accidentally caught Papa Phượng quietly rubbing his abdomen with a grimacing face. She remembered his tired, heavy footsteps, though he always tried to appear strong in front of her. She remembered the tender, longing gaze he held whenever he watched her busy at work. Only now did she understand the full, bitter truth. He had not chosen to move to the farm to retire or enjoy his golden years, but to spend the few days he had left by her side. He had hidden his fatal illness, silently enduring flesh-tearing pain night after night simply because he didn't and Apo's want to cause her further worry or heartache. Jiak hurriedly knelt down and wrapped his arms around Tien and Apo's trembling shoulders, struggling to hold back the tears welling in his own eyes. The entire hospital hallway seemed to freeze in boundless sorrow. Papa Phượng had used the remainder of his brief life to offer a quiet, vast, and noble love. But could that extraordinary willpower and profound love help him fight off the cruel illness to remain by Tien and Apo's side a little longer? Would this relentless disease grant him just a tiny bit more time to hear his young daughter call him and Apo's, Papa and Apo's, one more time? What will happen next? How will Papa Phượng and Apo's tear-stained heartfelt thoughts and silent will be revealed? Tune into the next episode to follow the deeply moving journey of Tien and Papa Phượng.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người đã quay trở lại với kênh của mình. Nay thì mình tiếp tục đưa đến một video về câu chuyện của Tử Tiên. Và chắc như cả nhà, như mọi người cũng đã biết thì bố Phượng thực ra thì cũng không phải là bố ruột của Tử Tiên, ông chỉ là bố chồng cũ của cô. Nhưng mà ông lại thương cô giống như là con gái ruột, vì ông biết được là bà Chiến, vợ cũ của ông, đối xử với cô không tốt, cũng như là cô phải chịu nhiều cực khổ. Nên là ngay cả khi ông bị bệnh và cả cái di chúc mà ông để lại sau khi qua đời cũng là dành tất cả cho Tử Tiên. Và khi Tử Tiên phát hiện ra ông bị bệnh thì cô cũng giống như con gái ruột của ông, đau khổ và sốc và tìm mọi cách để cứu chữa cho cha mình, chứ không phải là một người có thể là vì danh lợi hay là vì tiền bạc mà bỏ rơi ông. Vậy thì liệu diễn biến tiếp theo sẽ ra sao? Jack và Tử Tiên có thể cứu được bố Phượng hay không thì mời đón xem những tập tiếp theo ở trên kênh của mình nhé. Tạm biệt mọi người.